WTAJ's Nittany Nation and the Altoona Mirror are proud to present the NitWits, a roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Alrighty, good day to you. Welcome to another edition of the NitWits. Casey Kantz is always joined by Neil Riddell, Mark Brennan, and Mike Irwin. And guys, if you look back at this season and how it's gone for both Penn State and Nebraska, then Saturday's outcome in Lincoln should not have really been a surprise to you. Penn State outscoring opponents 157-39 after Saturday's game. They led 20-6 on Saturday. The Huskers, though, have grown accustomed to making second-half comebacks, and they stuck with that trend on Saturday, coming back from a double-digit deficit for a fourth time this season, and they beat Penn State 32-23. Guys, be that as it may, but now that it is Monday, we're all still talking about the big play, that being the Matt Lehman fumble as he tried to cross the goal line in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, TV replays, I could definitely see why the official made the call in real time, but you would hope that because that's why they have replay, to be able to reverse it. And, real tough call that went against Penn State, one of the toughest that they've had. But, look, I think all those things balance out over time. They still had a chance to win this game, and I'm not pinning it on the one play, but there was no question it was a very tough call, and it should have been reversed.
That was a turning point of the game, obviously, and that's why I think it's so important why so many fans are so riled up about it. The one disappointment to me is that the AP writer, I think it was a pool reporter, and was able to talk to the head official and got a comment and basically said that they didn't see enough evidence to overturn it. I would have liked to have heard more, and I guess it just is impossible, from the replay official as to why. Because it sure seemed like to every rational person, even the TV announcers who are unbiased, you would think, that it was a touchdown. So we never really got a definitive reason on why it was not overturned, which I would have liked to hear.
You'll see a couple replays here coming up. Mike, what'd you think?
Well, you hate, to lose any game, and you don't know what Nebraska would have done after that anyway, had we scored. So I kind of go along with what Neil's saying. I mean, I don't know what the outcome was going to be. Nebraska, you got to give them a lot of credit for their comeback in the second half. I think they've done it like 4 times this year. They've come back in the second half after being behind the first half. And Penn State's been a first-half team most of the year. Yeah. But I think if you're looking at the call, I think it was a bad call. I mean, we would have had another touchdown, but once you cover that plane of the goal line, it's a touchdown. So I think you said there was a picture in one of the newspapers that showed that.
Yeah, the Omaha Telegraph. They had a little bit different angle, or the Omaha World Herald, and and our paper is going to have that picture, so you can get a better look. And he has possession, because I think that was another one of the issues. Did he quite have possession? Mark, one thing you bring up, and it's true, they make the head official available, but it's usually very, very brief. It's not usually a lot of Q&A with them. They give a comment, and that's their answer to a pool reporter.
Well, Neil knows because he's the pool reporter at Penn State, and you've asked officials those questions. But I would, in the spirit of letting everybody know why, I just think it would be nice to be able to hear. Now, having said all that, Penn State had a couple of possessions afterward, as you guys both alluded to. There was every opportunity to come back and get it done. And I think at the end of the day, this was another situation where you could talk about one play in the fourth quarter, but this was another situation where Penn State sure looked like it was outcoached in the third quarter coming out of the break.
That's a great point, because Nebraska really came out, pounded it. With Abdullah and Taylor Martinez is obviously quite the treat to watch as well. They got the TD. They then got the pickoff of Matt McGloin. So, I mean, in a matter of 4 or 5 plays, it was back to an even game again.
It's very difficult to blame any of the kids, because these kids are playing with so much heart out there. And mental mistakes you can talk about, but, I mean, physical mistakes, I know probably the interception where McGloin threw the interception and the grounding of the ball were – probably 2 mental mistakes that they'd made. But, McGloin's giving it 110% when he's out there, and everybody is.
Yeah. Well, I think this was their best effort of the season, and I think they've been consistently super competitive all year long.
Against a good team.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. But, to me, to hang everything on it, they had the ball 6 times inside the Nebraska 20, and they got 1 touchdown. Yeah. They fumbled twice, and they had 3 field goals. So, I mean, this is a collective effort.
Yeah, when I mentioned the coaches, I want to be clear that I think they have been outcoached in the second halves of some games, but this is Bill O'Brien's first year, so I think he does get a pass with some of this. I think this is all part of that learning process. We're seeing the great stuff that he's doing, but I also think we're seeing a coach who's going to be terrific down the road going through some growing pains, and I'll bet you he'd be the first one to admit that.
Well, they've obviously outcoached a lot of people in the first quarter.
Absolutely.
First half.
Absolutely.
You look at, they had all 4 losses. They were either tied or ahead going into the second half.
Right.
And you don't know, I mean, you have to give Nebraska a lot of credit. 4 times this year they've come back and won games. So whatever they did at halftime, they did something right. And you have to give Taylor Martinez. I mean, he's an outstanding runner. They ran it right down our throats. And with our good defense, first half we held them down there a couple times. Our defense came up big inside the 10. The first 2 series it held them to a couple of field goals. It was 7-6 at that point. And then the fumble by Zwinak, hurt us there. So we made enough mistakes to count.
And isn't that Martinez? Isn't he a tough kid? He lowered his shoulder at one point, went right head-to-head with Gerald Hodges at one point in that game on Saturday.
Well, I think you're starting to see the defense get a little worn down also. You've seen it against running quarterbacks that Ohio State and Nebraska that really pound away, particularly in the secondary.
Well, and look at what Ohio State and Nebraska did. I mean, even though Nebraska was trailing, they never got away from the running game. They ran, dominated time of possession, and Penn State, I would argue, did the opposite. They got away. You had Zwinak averaging 6.9 yards per carry, 6.7, whatever it was, carried 21 times, which is a lot, but nothing compared to what those Nebraska backs were doing.
I think O'Brien might have pulled Zwinak too early.
Once he
fumbled, he's penalized him for the fumble, probably. I mean, and then he put Zwinak in there.
He got a little banged up.
Yeah, he also had cramp problems, Mike, that he had to have an IV for.
One real quick point about Lehman. I thought it was a great call and a great effort.
Great call by the staff, not a great call by the official.
Right, but if he puts the ball away, it's still 3rd and 1 at the goal at the 1, and I don't think they're going to stop Zwinak twice there.
Yeah, but credit, you know what, Lehman, that's an effort play, and it's easy to say you should put it away when he's out there. The kid is his first year playing a lot of football. I don't put any of that on him.
And he stretched it out. I mean, he did his job, but he probably had the TD.
For the record,
he did exactly what he should have done.
Exactly, I agree with that. You mentioned the running game. We're going to talk about that actually a little bit later in the show tonight. And I'll tell you, somebody who wasn't really shying away from commenting about the Matt Lehman fumble was Matt McGloin. You'll hear from him coming up as the Nitwits rolls on after the break.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By The Bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, magazines, and collectibles. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental.
Now back to Nitwits. A roundtable look at Nittany Lion football.
I mean, I don't know. We're not going to get that call here. We're not going to get that call ever, actually, against any team. Doesn't matter who the refs are. We'll never get that call.
Why? Why is that, man? Why do you think
it
that?
is? This is the way it is, man.
I know what I think you're saying, but what are you saying?
Right, what you think. Next question.
Is Penn State against the world?
Yeah, that's the mentality we have. You guys know that. We've said it before in our interviews. It's us against the world, and we're not going to get those calls in these type of games.
Yikes. Matt McGloin talking about that fumble call on the Matt Lehman fumble call as he stretched for the end zone in the fourth quarter. Talked a little bit about it in the first block. What do you guys make of, you were in the room, what do you make of Matt's comments there afterwards?
Well, I mean, his passion has served him well, and he's had to overcome a lot of things in the last 3 years. And I think he's been one of the most underappreciated players that Penn State has had in a long time. But I think these were a little ill-advised. It made him the story. It took away from a great game. Maybe some people feel it needed to be said, but everyone else in the room, there were 12 people out there, including Bill O'Brien, no one else pinned it on the coach or pinned it on the officials like McGloin did.
You know what I would argue about that? Back at Big Ten Media Days when Mike Motti was stepping up and making his strong comments about the NCAA and everything else, nobody else at Penn State was saying anything either. Mike Motti was kind of the guy who felt the need to step up and say something. And I'm not saying Matt McGloin's right or wrong, but I'm saying he felt something needed to be said, and he stood up and said it. So I'm not going to be critical of him, especially as a writer. I mean, from our perspective, it's great, but I don't think anybody had a problem in that locker room, and I don't know this for sure with what he said, but I think they realized, listen, one person said it. If everybody says it, it's going to come across a different way, just like Marty opened his mouth and said what he thought needed to be said at Big Ten Media Days.
You know, he's a competitive guy, and they just lost an important ball game, and I think he's frustrated at that point. And I don't think that the officials were swaying one way or the other. I think he'd probably regret that statement today, but just because he was in that situation and they had just lost, and you're coming off the field, almost let it simmer down and wait a day or two. And I think he'd probably agree, you know, but I don't think the Big Ten officials are out to get Penn State.
Well, I mean, I think we'll all agree. I mean, Penn State's in a very bad run of tough luck for a year now. And in the two biggest games, there have been some pretty tough calls. You go back to the Ohio State holding penalty, which was, you know, even worse than this. But, you know, I think you play football long enough and you're going to have some ebbs and flows with the officials. Look at the Nebraska people. They lost the national championship 30 years ago on a worse call than this. So I think we got to keep it all in perspective.
I absolutely agree with that, but I also have no problem with somebody venting their frustration a little bit after a game. Listen, you know, what do we want to, you know, these robots out there after games? The kid's emotional. I don't know what it hurt for him to come out and say what he said. Will he regret it? I'll bet you he doesn't regret it. I may be wrong about that, but having covered Matt McGloin for a few years now, I don't think he's going to back away from anything.
I know there's only 2 games left. We talked a little in the first block about you know, this team getting out to big leads, and leads in general, I guess, and then relinquishing them in the second half. And I read a stat: 28 second-half points combined now in each of their 4 losses. What is it? Is it literally that simple as a coaching staff making some changes against this football team when it comes to the second half?
I think as this coaching staff grows and gets hold of their, I mean, the other teams have definitely made adjustments at halftime. And Nebraska, I mean, they are the 17th best offensive team in the country. I mean, so you're playing a pretty good opponent there, and they're probably going to end up winning the Big Ten. I mean, they're right now ahead in the Legends division, and they'll probably end up playing Wisconsin in the playoff, and I think they would probably be favored. So we're probably looking at the Big Ten champ, and to hang in there and play them that closely. I mean, yeah, they've been doing that all year long, as we mentioned before. So, I mean, whatever Bo Pelini and his staff are doing at halftime, maybe used to be like Penn State, they would always have a sign in the locker room, the fourth quarter is ours. I mean, and this team, the first half is ours, but I'm not sure the third and fourth quarter are ours.
Well, Zach Zwinak certainly had a big day again on Saturday. We'll talk a little bit about him and the running game. We'll also talk about some Penn State injuries on the other side. You're watching the Nitwits. Stay with us.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal.
I'm Jordan Hill from your Penn State Mini Lions, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Welcome back. Breaking down a Penn State 32-23 loss at Nebraska on Saturday. Penn State going into this game a little banged up, although Kyle Carter and Jordan Hill, you just saw Jordan right there, they both did play. But the injury situation kind of picked up again after the game on Saturday. Carter now injured. Again, he injured a wrist. He also had Malcolm Willis leaving, some other guys leaving as well, James Terry. Any updates? I know we taped this a little bit early, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dicey to try to give updates the way that this taping works and when Bill O'Brien does his press conference. I will say Kyle Carter went off. It looked like his shoulder was actually packed in ice as well. But in terms of injury updates, I'm not sure this is the right... I don't mean to dodge your question.
No. He's been banged up. It was nice to see Jordan Hill, not because he did a Nitwits tease, but he came back after what looked like a tough injury the week before, played with a lot of character. This whole team has played with a lot of character, but they are getting thin because Willis went out and came back, and I'm not sure what his status will be.
I think that's a big loss. Malcolm, we're not that deep with defensive backs anyway. And I thought Willis was playing an outstanding game there, and along with Adrian Amos making some great tackles in there. I mean, if you look at the defense, some of these young guys are really stepping up. Amos and then Barnes, the defensive end. I forget how many tackles for losses
he had
they had.
He had
3 himself, but I think from a team standpoint, they had like 7 or 8.
7, yeah.
Tackles for loss.
You're talking about the defense. You take away the safety, you take away, kind of the pick six, and they allow 23 points, which should be enough to win.
Yeah, let's talk running backs because Zach Zwinak had another good day, a great day, we should say. He had that 50-yard touchdown right off the opening possession for Penn State, 141 yards, another career high for him. Didn't see much of Bill Belton. Saw, I think he had a carry for a loss. Looks like Zwinak's the guy. I mean, he's been the guy. He's certainly taken on this role. He looks great, other than the fumble, of course.
I think he's the best red-headed running back since the mid-'60s.
Well, they had the announcers were saying they reminded him of Larry Zonka. He's a little bigger.
That's right, yeah.
He's a little bigger than I was. He's only 2 1/4 or something like that. That's probably about 35 pounds heavier than me or something.
Well, they've clearly found a running back, and they've found a few things as this process has gone on. Looks like their kicking game has kind of begun to work its way out.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at Nebraska's running backs. I mean, in comparison, here they had 3 guys. They have Burkhead is out, and then they have Abdullah in there, and the other guy Cross, a freshman that scored a couple touchdowns against us. I mean, they're like loaded with running backs. I mean,
Penn State was loaded with running backs. I mean,
I guess when we lost a few.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if if Silas Red were still here and you have this guy as your second or third teamer.
That's a good point.
And I'm not saying that any good luck to Silas Red wherever he is, and I think Penn State's happy with the job this guy's doing. But what a story he's been. He's gone from kind of bottom of the depth chart. People barely knew about him. Had a tough injury a couple years ago. Has come back. Everybody's talking about Burkhead out there. Obviously, he didn't play, but this is a guy who brings some of those same things, that tough running style. He popped that 50-yarder. He was running away from people. That was great.
Yeah, but the thing I like about it is it's not just been injuries that he's won this job. He's surpassed people through an open competition.
He was probably 4th going into the season, I think. And now he's number
maybe
1.
5th. Dukes might have been in there.
Well, Day was actually got playing time against Virginia before.
And a good thing he's only a sophomore, so he's going to be around for a couple more years, I think.
All right, guys, up next, Indiana at home this coming Saturday. We'll look ahead and we'll give our picks as we always do. Coming up next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By McMullen Furniture, the friendly store with quality furniture at a reasonable price. By Scotch Valley Country Club, the area's premier golf destination. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
I'm Tony Mancuso from Penn State Athletics. So you're watching the Nitwits.
Oh, Tony Mancuso.
He's going to be the athletic director someday.
You tell us we have 2 minutes and you put Mancuso on. We can't even talk about it. He's the man behind all the videos on Go
Salute
PSU.
to Tony. Just 2 games remaining for Penn State. Both will come at home beginning this upcoming Saturday with Indiana. Neil, we'll let you introduce the
Well, I tell you, this guy on the right, Mark Brennan, is coming on like Secretariat. I mean, oh my God. He picked Nebraska. He picked Purdue decisively. I saw him at halftime. He was ready to turn over the trophy for the year. And I said, this game's not over. Nebraska is at least going to make a run. Congratulations, Mr. Brennan. We're impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I would have rather seen Penn State win that game because I try to be unbiased, but I've said from the beginning of the year, I'm rooting for these kids because they have gone through so much.
And that's why I didn't pick them, because I didn't want to influence the team.
Yeah.
That's all right, Mark. You get on the other side.
But I will say this. Looking at this Indiana game, I think I like the way this team reacted. And no matter what anybody said about McGloin, I think he was speaking his mind. Most of the guys, they weren't upbeat, but they didn't seem devastated by this loss. I think they're going to come back against Indiana, play a fun game, offensive touchdown, defensive touchdown, special teams touchdown, Penn State 45-24.
We got to get 3 picks in under a minute. Mike?
All right, I'm going to say 35-7. Penn State 35-7. Indiana's never beaten us since they've been in the Big Ten, so I agree with Mark. It's going to be a high-scoring game, but I don't think we're going to give up 24 points. 35-7.
Had Penn State won the Nebraska game, maybe this would be a trap, but there's a lot of frustration. I think they'll unleash it. I'm going to say Penn State 40, Indiana 17.
40-17. I'll go Penn State 31 and Indiana 10. That's going to do it for another edition of the Nitwits. Thanks, as always, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
NitWits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial Raymond James, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, magazines, and collectibles. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. By your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By McMullen Furniture, the friendly store with quality furniture at a reasonable price. By Scotch Valley Country Club, the area's premier golf destination. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.